I was born in Burundi, East Africa. Back home in Burundi, there aren't a whole lot of opportunities for young women like me, especially not in sciences. When I moved to the United States, I was 17 years old, and I had no knowledge of the English language. So one of the first few things I did when I moved here is watch a lot of movies. American movies, including Star Wars and Star Trek and all those nerdy things. TB is one of the top 10 cause of death in my home country. I grew up knowing people who died from tuberculosis. And so I knew the importance of studying the disease and trying to find something that could get to people right away. In terms of currently used methods for TB diagnosis, there are these 100-year-old reagents that are not specific to tuberculosis. What we aim to do with our new reagent is to find a new, more specific reagent that actually targets the metabolic activity of tuberculosis and other mycobacteria. Our reagent, it gets incorporated by the mycobacteria and it gets processed. And this processing involves adding a lipid chain or a lipid tail onto our reagent. It carries a cargo or a fluorescent dye onto the sugar, trehalose. And only after lipidation or addition of the lipid tail do you get a turn-on in fluorescence of our reagent. And the kicker is that this, because it's relying on an enzymatic action, it doesn't take long to happen. You don't need to do an acid wash. All the 11 steps that were required for the uramine stain have come down to just one. TB is already being diagnosed using a microscope, so there wouldn't be a need for new equipment. And so anyone that is able to read a microscope or know how to use a microscope would be able to march towards any remote area in the world and do TB testing. What would I say to young women who want to have a career in science? Try it. Do it. For me, specifically, for my own personal journey, it took me a while to believe that I could be a scientist. The typical depiction of a scientist does not look like me. And so it took me a while to believe that I could do it, to believe that if I do an experiment and it doesn't work, it's not a reflection of my own personal failure, but rather just the work. But that being said, if I didn't do the experiment from the get-go, I wouldn't even know that I could have an experiment fail. I wouldn't experience that and understand, whether I like it or not. And so for young women out there, however tough it is, you gotta just jump and get an internship, apply to PhD programs, just do it. That's really the only real way to test yourself.